Alrighty, we're going to get started here. Welcome, everyone. Really excited. Good to see your faces and just excited to talk to you today. My name is Matt Emhoff, and I am a spiritual and life coach, as well as a director of Deeper Ministry. And what we do is train you in the art of living free. And today's webinar is called Learning to Love Yourself. It's about a month ago. I was asking Jesus and just kind of listening, to my own heart as well, and saying, um, what is needed right now? What should we be thinking about, talking about? What should I be writing about? What can I speak and say into kind of the time we're in right now? And the answer that I got kind of over and over again was love. Love, which was really cool. And so since then, I've been working on it, writing about it, writing these webinars, that kind of thing. And it just seems to be affirmed over and over. Even this morning in my morning meditation, it was talking about what we're really after is love, and that every moment, every present moment is saturated with love. When it's up to us to see it and enter into it and connect with it and see life and the world through that lens. And so I'm excited, I'm passionate about this topic because I think it's so relevant for where we're at individually and in the culture around us in our country and in the world, or the country I'm in and in the world. So um, I'm very, very excited about it. It was about, I don't know, 10 years ago that I remember I was out in the woods at a men's retreat where I love to be in the woods, talking to God. And I had always wanted to help people. I always wanted to be in some type of ministry. But at the time I was in these jobs that I just was not passionate about, not excited about, frustrated. So I was kind of bringing that to God and saying, okay, God, what's going on here? Because this is my desire and it's not working out like this. So I need help here. And I remember God saying something like, oh, Matthew, yes, I made you for this. You will be doing this kind of ministry and helping people. But before I can trust you with my people, you have to learn to love. And when he said that, it was like my heart dropped a little bit, because it was like, I mean, you give me something to like learn or figure out, or even back then, in my 20s, I had some skill and I had learned some things, and I could natural ability and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh wait, love. How do I do that? And I knew deep down that there was just a lot of work to be done in learning to love well. And so I kind of started that journey. It became a decade where it was kind of the theme that God led me on, and I kept going back to. And there's probably many things I've forgotten in that time. There was so much that just kept going and going about how to love well. It really became a mantra of my life, is learn to love well. And I'm a person that likes to know what's the bottom line, what's the focus, tell me what we're after, the goal, that kind of thing. So I really appreciate kind of how it's laid out in the Bible, and Jesus talking about it in the scriptures. And there's even the verse that says, above all else, love. Above all else is love. And I think we hear that voice and kind of nod our heads and thumbs up, and yeah, that sounds pretty good. Um, but there's also something in us that probably says something like, well, yeah, but what about being right, having the right theology or the right thoughts or the right way to do things? Well, that's all else. Or what about doing the right things, being moral and teaching other people how to do the right things and all that? Well, yeah, those are also good things, but it's all else. Or what about witnessing and getting other people to come to church, or serving, or that kind of thing? All else. Those are all great things, but if we're asking what's above it all, what is the point? What are we really after? The Bible's pretty clear. It's love. Jesus walks around talking about this kingdom of God, and really at the center is the King, who's Jesus, and wherever he is and whatever he's doing, we're seeing love. We're seeing love at work. And the disciples are probably a little bit like me or maybe like you, who bug Jesus enough to say, would you give us the bottom line? What is it all about? Give us the highest commandment. How can we do it just right? And so he finally said, oh, fine, I'll tell you. The highest commandment, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, strength, and soul. And the other is like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. And what's really interesting, I think two things is, one, he says, the other is like it, right? And I think we make it a hierarchy that loving God is the highest thing, and then loving others and loving ourselves is second. And he's saying the other is like it. Because what I believe he's saying is that it's all interconnected. The way that we love God is the way we love others, is the way we love ourselves. And when we're loving ourselves well, we can love God well. When we're not loving other people, it gets us stuck loving God and loving ourselves. It's all interwoven and interconnected. And the other thing that's interesting is the tag on at the end, love your neighbor as yourself. The as yourself, we usually leave off in the way that we think or live or spend our time, because it's much easier to kind of categorize loving other people. Like, okay, I may not do that well all the time, but I know kind of how to do that. I can control it. I can, offer to other people, that kind of thing. And then secondly is loving God, which I think I know how to do, but a lot of times it's really hard to do and I'm not sure. But loving ourselves really just gets the table scraps, whatever's left over, whatever little bit is left over. And so this webinar is the first of three. It's going to be learning to love ourselves, learning to love God, learning to love others. And it's very intentional that learning to love ourselves is the first webinar that we're diving into. And the reason is this, is that I believe loving ourselves is like a gateway. It's kind of like a dam where, love is supposed to flow like a river. We've talked about this before in other webinars and emotions. It's supposed to be a flowing river that brings life, that's dynamic, that's moving. That's the way love is supposed to be. When we don't love ourselves, it's like we put up a dam and we start stopping the love that flows, not just about loving ourselves, but loving God and loving others, right? And so we want to love ourselves to be able to open up that dam so love can flow and flow and flow. So let me start by saying this. I like word pictures and analogies, so I'll use a lot of them. Different things connect with different people. So you may have been on one side or another of this scenario. So sometimes with my wife, Sherry, I will say, oh, sweetie, you look so good in that shirt. And if she's having a rough day or a rough week or whatever, sometimes her response is, no, I don't. Which is such an interesting response. We're not voting. We're not, I didn't ask for your opinion. I'm telling you, I think you look good in that shirt. But she said no. And not only am I offering her a compliment, a throwaway compliment, no, it's a connection. It's encouragement. It's love. It's fun. It's, wow, you look great. It's confidence to go into her day. And she's saying no. She's saying no. And we all do that in some way, shape, or form. Why would she say no? Well, it's because she already has a belief that she doesn't look good in the shirt. Right? She already has a belief that she's not enough or too much in some way, shape, or form. Fill in the blank for yourself. We all feel that way and say those things to ourselves often. And so I could sit there all day and tell her how amazing she looks, and it will not get through if she doesn't receive it, if she's not open to receive it. And if she's that locked down, then she goes into her day that locked down, right? And so we take that picture and now project it onto our relationship with God. See, God's been telling you, I love you from the day you were born, before you were born. I love you. And yet we often say no because we have a fundamental belief that I am unlovable. I'm not worth it. I'm not valuable enough. Not really. You know what I've done? You've seen how I've messed up, right? So it's nice. Thanks, God. God loves me. Great. But we don't really receive it. We don't really receive it. He's telling us, I love you. I want to be with you. I want to spend time with you. I want to nurture you. I want to connect with you. You're so amazing. And we go, yeah, sure. Okay, whatever. But I've got to live this life and I don't do it very well and I fail sometimes and all that. right? And so then our love for ourselves is now not aligned with what God says of us. Our love for ourselves, the way we view ourselves, is now not aligned, is in misalignment with what God sees in us and what he calls out in us and what he speaks over us. And of course, we want to be in alignment, walk in step with the Spirit, right? Because if we change the scenario around, and my wife Sherry is having a great day or a great week, and she already believes that she's enough, and I come in and say, hey, you look great in that shirt, guess what her answer is going to be? Thank you. Oh, I love this shirt. And she's going to tell me about why she loves the shirt, or the color looks good with her eyes, or, whatever it is. And it's this cool connection, and it's fun, and it's energizing. And then we both leave that conversation just a little bit more excited and energized and filled up for the rest of the day. And can you imagine if we live that way with God? And he says, I love you. And we already believe that we're lovable. We already believe that we're enough because we're saying it to ourselves. We're loving ourselves. And that aligns with what he's saying. So we would say, yes, thank you, God. Thank you. I receive that love. And as God delights in us, we delight in the way he's created us, in our uniqueness, and our passion, and our power, and all that good stuff, right? Which then you can see the dam starts to come down and the water starts to flow and flow and flow. And it's so good, so good. So we're going to go into a couple myths that I think right away block us from being able to love ourselves well. And we're going to talk about those. I do want to say, usually I love questions and want to answer those. Today, there's just so much in this that I won't get to your questions. So please, if you have questions, feel free to write them, and I'll look at them at the end and maybe try to respond individually or in a future webinar. But I just won't have time today because this is such a big subject and a passion of mine. I want to say as much as I can to it. So myth one that we believe is that everything we do for ourselves is selfish. Right? As soon as I start talking about this, and I'm a coach, right? So I talk about investing in yourself, and you're great, and go do some things to take care of yourself. And the first thing most people say is, "Oh, I feel guilty," or "Isn't that prideful?" Right? Oh, wow. Okay. So right away we're just stuck because everything that we could possibly do for ourselves is selfish. So what we want to do is learn the difference between selfish and self-care. Right? There's selfish and self-care, and they're both doing things for ourselves, right? But one is a good motivation, one isn't. So there are many different characteristics of selfishness, but a few that I thought of that might be helpful is to say, how do I know I'm being selfish? Well, when we're selfish, we're often disconnected, right? We start disconnecting, isolating, disconnecting from other people or our own heart or God. We're not as open-minded, open to other ideas. We're not curious, right? Asking the next question, I wonder what this is about, where this is headed. I want to know more, is not there. And then, of course, that leads to unawareness. Selfishness leads to us not being aware, right? All of these things would stop us from being selfish. So we say, nope, 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 shutting down, pulling back, hiding more. That's selfishness. Self-care does the opposite. It makes us feel more connected. Now, self-care might be going off by ourselves to get a little space and recharge the batteries, but it makes us more open to connection when we come back, right? It makes us more open to many things. It makes us more curious and ask the next question, and it makes us more aware of our own hearts and what's going on around us, right? That's self-care. So think about it this way. Let's say I was eating a sandwich right now. Now that'd be a little rude because I'm eating in front of a bunch of people that are not eating. But aside from that, if I was eating a sandwich right now, no one would look at me and point a finger and say, "Hey, you're so selfish. Why are you doing that?" Well, I'm eating a sandwich and I'm doing something for me. I'm filling my body up because I know that if I eat a sandwich, my body metabolizes that food into energy. And even if I'm not thinking that consciously, subconsciously, my body starts to say, hey, where's some food? My stomach starts to grumble because when I am full, or at least have some food, then that gives me the energy gives my body the focus to be able to do the things I want to do in my life, right? So it is the same with self-care. What happens with self-care is our soul metabolizes self-care into energy, right? Our soul metabolizes self-care into energy. When we take care of ourselves, when we recharge the batteries, when we refill and recreate our internal world, it makes us energized. We come back ready. Let's go. We're more passionate. We're more connected. We're all over it, right? But when we don't, we often offer out of, just an empty well. We're scraping bottom. And then instead of kindness to say, okay, I need to slow down, we often get more harsh with ourselves. Oh, I'm not doing it well. I got to do it better, harder, more, follow the rules better, all that, instead of the kindness and empathy to say, whoa, what's going on? We need to slow down. We need to take care of ourselves. So I know I'm mixing analogies right now, but again, I love the word pictures. You get this one from John Eldredge, which is the difference between a canal and a reservoir, which I really like, right? And so a canal, you imagine just like basically a riverbed, and as soon as it gets whatever it gets, it just flows. And like we said, we want that river of love to just flow. But the problem is that it gives right away whatever it gets. And so it spends a lot of time being dry, being empty when it's not receiving anything. And I think a lot of us do that. Again, scraping bottom, coming up with just sludge and trying harder to offer without ever slowing down to offer something for ourselves. But what I love about the idea of a reservoir is a reservoir fills and fills and fills until it has things, a water in reserve, and then it offers over from its overflow. It offers beyond what it needs for itself. It offers, and it offers naturally, because when it overflows, it just happens and it all comes out, right? And so that's how love is. We need to be able to love ourselves and fill ourselves up to a place where we have so much that it's just a natural overflow. And who lives like that? I mean, I wish there were more examples I could think of off the top of my head where people are just so comfortable and filled up and ready to offer, not because they're exhausted or striving, but because they're just full and free and confident in who they are. Oh man, I want to live that way. I want to be that way. And I think God wants us to do that too. He offers that kind of life to us, right? But part of the problem is that we need moments where the pressure is off, right? So our brain, our intellect, our problem solving, our strategy, our logic can go all day long, fixing problems, thinking of new ideas, navigating life, all that kind of thing. But our soul can't. Our soul needs breaks. Our soul needs a deep breath to pause, to recharge. And our soul says, thank you for a break. Thank you for letting us pause because I'm getting exhausted. Right? And I think we've felt that before. But the thing about self-care is it's very vulnerable. I think that's why we don't do it often, because it's vulnerable, because it is declaring, I am worth it. I am valuable. And that's a hard thing to do. Doesn't that feel a little uncomfortable, even as I say it? If I were to say, man, I'm really worth spending energy, spending resources, money, time, you are valuable, that valuable. Whew, wow. And self-care is just declaring that. That's pretty big. But this really leads to myth 2. So myth 1 is everything we do is for ourselves is selfish. Wrong. It's not. There's selfish and self-care, and we can learn the difference between the two. So myth number 2 is that love is conditional. Self-love is conditional, right? And so what we want to do is now find the balance between the realities of there are conditional things in our lives. So we find the balance between what's conditional and that love is unconditional, right? So I think of our refrigerator in our kitchen because it is covered with artwork. It's covered with projects. Every time I open the door, another piece of paper falls off because there are so many things on there, from Nolan, our 7-year-old, Evelyn, who's almost 4, and they love to draw and color and glue and cut things and glitter and, you name it, it's on our refrigerator. And what's beautiful about that is, it's covered because we don't have conditions about what artwork we put on the thanks for the thumbs up, Nolan. Awesome. We don't have conditions on what artwork we put up on the refrigerator, right? We don't look at Nolan's stick figure and say, hey, you put 3 fingers on a hand, it should really be 4, or I mean, really be 5. And by the way, the nose is just not right, and your perspective on the mountains in the background just don't make any sense. So this is not fridge worthy. Out of here. No, we don't do that. We wouldn't do that because we don't love our kids because of how they are. We love them for who they are, right? And that comes pretty easily for us. Sometimes it's hard, but it comes pretty easily for us. But as we grow up and get older, the editor comes in and we start being much more harsh, and we have more responsibilities, and we start loving ourselves more for how we are than who we are. Then we start doubting who we are because of that, right? So how we are and who we are, there's a difference there. So unconditional love is saying you are loved for who you are. And then how we are is about the real conditional life that we live, right? Because when in 20 years, when Nolan is 27, Evelyn's 24, if we're, and their artwork is kind of on the same level, if we're still putting it on the refrigerator and saying, oh my gosh, this is the best art in the world, you should sell it, you should show everybody, well, they'll be pretty disappointed when nobody buys it, because the sad reality is that if you want to get paid for your art, it has to be pretty good. That's a condition. It has nothing to do with how much you're loved. See the difference? There's a difference there. The conditions that we live by versus the unconditional love that we can build a foundation on, that we can live out of, right? So we want to learn to love ourselves that way. We put all these conditions on ourselves, and then we put all these conditions on other people, and we get confused between love and just the realities of consequences of life. We can love people really well while being accountable and holding others accountable for our successes and our failures and everything in between. We can learn to get better and smarter and all that kind of stuff. But our value, our worth at an identity level is not based on how we are. It's just who we are. And God says, you're enough, right? So we'll talk about love from this perspective of value. I'm not going to try to define love because it's too big of a topic to try to define. But I think it's helpful to speak from the idea of value, right? So love is about what we value and how we show this value, right? Because it's practical. We can think of, what we love, we want to fight for, right? We want to protect. We won't put it in a safe place, or stand up for them if it's a person. What we love and we want to spend time with, we want to think about, we want to talk to the people that we really value, or the topics that we really value. We honor and respect what we value, right? We want to listen to it, we say yes to it, and we nurture and take care of and grow and invest in what we value, right? And so that's really how we feel, the felt love, right? We feel loved and offer love in those ways. It's very, very practical. So a great way to understand, how do I value myself in a healthy way without it becoming prideful or feeling guilty or, trying to be more or less than I am? Just how do I value myself? Because that's learning to love ourselves well. And a really great backdoor way into this is through desire, right? A lot of us may remember that verse, delight in yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart, the desires of your heart. Now, I used to think that meant that if I delight in the Lord, he'll give me what I want, which would be pretty awesome because there's a lot of things that I want. And so I'll try this delighting thing and see how it works out. But I learned a little later that what it really means, or I believe it means, that when we delight in the Lord, what he does is he gives us the desires so that we can desire, right? He gives us the things, he shows us the things that bring our heart alive. And what that does is then gives us desire That means now I have things to hope for and dream about and invite other people in and go after, right? Which is even better than just giving me the things that I want sometimes when I'm not being selfish, because now there's the chase, there's this movement, there's this growth, there's this excitement, this energy that happens inside me because my desires are coming out and seen and known, and I can live that way and offer that way, right? But there's a problem, and many of us struggle with this because we were taught self-denial, and self-denial isn't all bad, because when we're wanting that fifth piece of pizza or the third glass of wine or wanting to say that negative, another negative comment, it's good to deny ourselves the right to do that. Hey, whoa, I'm not going to do that. Stop yourself, right? But if self-denial is not balanced with self-love, it just becomes self-diminishment. It becomes too much, and we start really diminishing ourselves and only seeing ourselves. And honestly, many Christian environments are like this, where we're so afraid of anything that could be looked at as pride, or we feel guilty, or don't see value in ourselves. There are many Christian environments where people walk around diminishing themselves, and it's just gross. It's just not what God has for us. Oh, I'm so terrible, I'm no good, I'm just a sinner. Oh, that wasn't me, that was God. And I mean, it's good to give God the praise, but he wants to show us off, right? It would make absolutely no sense to go up to an artist and say, you're the most amazing artist I've ever seen, but your art sucks. That doesn't make sense. And if God is the artist that creates us as his art, then there must be some good in us, some beauty in us. And if we say God is amazing, right, then we can say we're the reflection. We were made in his image and bear his image. So there must be some value in us. So we can balance self-denial and self-love and self-care, right? And so it's dangerous to go too far into self-denial, because then we start believing the idea that I don't matter, that I'm not valuable. And many of us have a struggle to say, hey, in a group or with people that we're around or whatever, to say, hey, this is what I need. This is what I want. This is what my desires are. Not to say I have to get them, but to put them on the table, to be honest. Here I am. I would like this. To be honest is so freeing, but it's also communicating to yourself, I'm worth it. I'm valuable enough to do this, right? And so there's a practical tool, practical thing you can do to start digging into this. It's very simple, and it's just make a list of the things that bring your heart alive. Make a list of the things that bring your heart alive. And maybe you already do some of these, maybe you don't, but some of us can't even make the list because we're so used to not even thinking about ourselves and what we might desire and want and that kind of thing. So feel the permission and do it with God. Say, okay, God, help me, show me, right? Delight in him, and he'll give you the desires of your heart. He'll show you. So make the list, and then make a plan to do some of them, right? Invest a little bit in yourself, because we invest in what we value. And if you're learning to value yourself, then you have to invest in yourself. Time, money, effort, even somebody else helping you or sacrificing for you, you're worth it. You're worth it. And that's not every day, once in a while. We don't get to live, just only in our desires all the time. But we need those moments, right? Those moments of self-investment. And so 2 categories that I think are really helpful to think in are play and rest. There are many ways to do self-care that have to do with our desires, but none of them are so simple as play and rest, but they seem to be ones that we do the least, which is really interesting, right? So they're just very practical ways to practice self-love through desire, right? So I love Brene Brown on play. She talks about play, and there's 4 characteristics of play. One is that we enjoy it, right? We enjoy it. It's not necessarily something that somebody else enjoys. We're doing something for someone else. That's not necessarily enjoyment. What do you enjoy? Number 2 is we lose track of time, right? We lose track of time. Number 3 is we lose track of self-consciousness. And number 4 is we don't produce or achieve anything. So I'll go back through those if you want to capture them more. But so again, Number one is we enjoy it. We often do things that other people enjoy, and that's okay, but it may not be play for you. It may not do what play does and what you need. So way to go, sacrificing for others and that kind of thing, but balance it out with some things that say, no, this is the way that I play. This is the what I enjoy, right? And number two, we lose track of time. um, Again, our soul needs moments where we're not pressured by the time constraints, and you better be on time, and you better get this project in by this time, and like those are real conditions that we have to live by. But our soul needs moments where we can just breathe and say, hey, even if we say for the next couple hours or for a half day or for one day, or there are time constraints, but within that time we're not checking our watch and, oh man, I got to get this done or play. We just lose track of time. And then we lose track of self-consciousness, right? What are other people thinking about me? How am I responsible for everybody else? How do I have to take care of everybody else? What are everybody thinking about me? Are they judging me? Do they like me? Oh, that's exhausting for our soul. So what if we could lose track of that for a while? Because again, those are real conditions we have to live in when we work and have a family and responsibilities, right? But sometimes we need a break, we need a rest, that good self-care. Um, and finally, we don't produce or achieve anything. And this is maybe the hardest one for us, is because often we link what we achieve and what we produce to if we're loved, if we're valuable, right? And so again, in the unconditional love way, has nothing to do with what you produce, right? In the conditions of this world and how we are, yeah, there's a lot of good producing and achieving that can happen. We can learn and grow in that way, right? But our soul needs moments where we're not producing or achieving anything. I just get to play and have fun. This is awesome, right? So what's fascinating to me is I was thinking about this, and the difference between play and rest is actually they're the same four categories for rest, right? We enjoy the rest. We slow down. We can just kind of smile and be okay with ourselves, and we lose track of time, and we lose track of self-consciousness. We don't produce or achieve anything. The difference is play is energetic. We're moving. We're doing something. It's dynamic. Rest is static. It's stopping, it's slowing down, it's solitude, it's just be instead of do, just be. And we need both. Both of them do very similar things, but we need both, right? And so we can learn to invest in ourselves and take moments of play and moments of rest to have that self-care. And what we're communicating to ourselves is, you are worth it. You are worth it. And our soul says, oh, thank you. Thank you for slowing down. Thank you for giving me space to just breathe and be okay, right? Um, so I was thinking of examples. I have a friend who loves bird watching, and last year she took a trip down to a bird sanctuary, took a day and went down and just did some bird watching. And I was so proud of her. That's amazing. That's so fun. And other people don't care about birds or don't want to go bird watching, whatever, that's fine. But for her, that was rest and play, because it slowed her down and she just got to walk and just kind of be there. But also, I know how excited she gets when she sees different birds, and it's adventure and it's fun. And what kind of bird is that? And have I seen that one before? Right? Something so simple, but she had to invest the time and the gas money and the, effort to plan it and get childcare and all that kind of stuff. And she did it, and she came back more energized. Right? Some of us love. I'm just thinking of, because we're in the summer, we love our gardens and some people spend hours in their garden, and it's restful and peaceful, snipping off the dead stuff and making sure, they're the beautiful flowers, or the garden that's growing, fruit or vegetables and all that kind of stuff. That's beautiful. That's good. That's rest and play. And you can just breathe, and your soul says, thank you. This is good. Right? Some of us like competitive games and that kind of thing as well. That's play, not so much rest, but that can also be good, and all kinds of examples. So it was about a month ago that I came to Sherry, my wife, and just said, hey, I've been busier than I've ever been in this COVID quarantine thing. There's been so many people that need help through coaching, and I've been doing these webinars and all kinds of stuff. And I said, what's really cool is I'm very energized by it, and I don't feel burned out. I feel very excited. I'm passionate. Let's go. Let's do it. But I do know that if I keep doing this, even though I feel excited about it, I can get to that place where I get burned out. And, my soul starts going, oh, I need a little bit of a break. And so I said, I would like to take a day and just go do my own thing, be by myself, and kind of recharge the batteries. I said, you need that too. She's been home with the kids and doing homeschool before summer started, and now the summer has started. So there's just a lot that she's been doing. So she also needs a day or a half day or whatever she wants to take for herself, for that good self-care. And so, I did. And so, it's not always easy, because now I know she has to sacrifice to take care of our kids and do all the things at home so I can go do that. It felt irresponsible, it feels irresponsible sometimes. I took a day of work because I know that's more restful for me to go places when there's not 1,000 other people there. And so I took a day of work, and everybody else is, working in their business or at their desk or whatever. And oh man, that feels irresponsible. If people knew what I was doing, right. And that kind of thing. So you kind of have to fight for it. You kind of have to say, okay, but what I'm doing is getting ready to go back so I can be a better father and husband, be a better coach, be a better friend, all that kind of stuff. So I spent some money, I spent some time, I spent some effort. And what I did is I went to Lake Michigan. And if you've never been to Lake Michigan on the west side of the state of Michigan, I love it. It is gorgeous. There's all these hardwood and pine forests that go right into these sand dunes. And the sand dunes can be up to 200 feet tall. You can run on them, play on them, do whatever. And then those go down to a beautiful white sandy beach, and then onto this lake that you cannot see the other side of. And when it's a beautiful day, it's just awesome. You can go swimming, although it's usually pretty cold. But I love to go swimming. It's very refreshing, and on a hot day. And then lay out on the beach and just soak up the sun. And there's all kinds of trails and hiking trails, and that's one of the things I love the most. For me personally, what brings my heart alive is to explore a trail in the woods that I've never been on before. I'm always wondering what's over the next hill. I wonder what I'm going to see. I wonder what I'm going to experience. I wonder what wildlife is here, or what view that I'll come out and see forever. It's just exciting to me. It energizes me. And so I planned it all out ahead of time. I drove the 2.5 hours, had some awesome listening to some audiobook that I'm excited about, got out there, hiked around for a while, lost track of time, spent too much time hiking. So I was really hungry. So then I went and gotten lunch. And then I went to a place called Grand Haven, which has an inlet river that has a pier and some grass and all that kind of stuff. And I took my chair and sat and watched the boats go in and out of the harbor, which I think is kind of an old man thing to do. But I love it. It's so fun to me. It's so restful to me. I let my brain kind of wander, and there's nothing I'm achieving or producing, or nobody's asking anything of me. I just get to sit and be. Doesn't that sound good? It's just so refreshing. And then after I did that for a while, I went up to a different state park that I've been to many times before, and have a spot where not many other people go, that just kind of gives me a beach all to myself that I got to swim and hang out at, and that kind of thing. And then came home later in the evening, and so I was tired physically because I did a lot, right? But my soul was at peace, at rest. You can probably hear it even in my voice. I'm still excited about it. It's still energizing to me. I want to tell you about how awesome it was. And it was because I took the time to do it. And what I was communicating to myself is, you are worth it, right? You are worth it, which means I love you. You are worth fighting for. You are worth investing in. You are worth growth and value, and to be honored and respected and asked, what do you need and what do you want? And I said yes to all that. And I did it because it's become a discipline in my life. And that's not how I live every day. I can't do that all the time. But once in a while, I need to take that. And it may not be a whole day. It may be an hour during the day where I take for lunch, I get away from people and just kind of relax, or I go for a hike around here for a couple hours and blow off steam or whatever, right? But we need time to invest in ourselves, love ourselves well, right? Um, so the last thing I want to talk about is self-empathy. Self-empathy. And self-empathy is one thing that I think has had the biggest impact on me and on many of my clients in the area of loving ourselves, learning to love ourselves. Um, and so I want to tell you about it through a story that happened to me. So it was years ago. I was getting my master's in counseling, and most of my classes were online. But one of them was an on-campus intensive summer class that I had to go to, 10 days of intensive, like 6-hour classes or whatever it was. And the school I was going to is in Wisconsin. And so if you don't know me, I'm an introvert. And one of the places I'm most uncomfortable is in a group of people that I don't know very well, that I'll probably never speak to again, or never be around again. That's just uncomfortable to me. I am not good at small talk. I get very uncomfortable, and I'll probably forget your name, and that's awkward. And I'd just rather avoid the whole thing. It's just not me. I just don't enjoy it. And so coming into this class, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, okay, so there's going to be 20 students and a professor I'm never going to see again. It's just going to be all small talk and getting to know each other and all that. And so I was kind of feeling the angst of that. And I was telling my best friend, Dan Bumford, I was like, hey, man, here's my strategy. I'm just going to keep my head down, kind of keep quiet, disengage or engage the least amount I can to get through this time, because I know it's probably going to not be fun. And he said, well, I wonder if God has more than that for you. And for a minute, I was mad. I was like, oh, come on, man. Like, I'm looking for empathy here. Just tell me my plan's a good plan and you got my back, and, yes, go do it. But of course, he did what a good friend should do and push back and really dig into my heart a little bit and say, I wonder if there's more. And of course, I was learning about kind of at the back end of that decade of learning about love and learning specifically about vulnerability. So I was like, all right, fine. I got to go into this and be open and vulnerable and all that stuff. Not real excited about it, but I'm going to do it. So I get there, and the first day of class, we're going around and we're saying, you have to say your name, where you're from, and what you want to get out of the class. So we go around, and it finally gets to me, and I say, my name's Matt, and I'm from Michigan, and what I want to get out of this class is this. Sometimes I have a hard time getting to know people, especially people I won't know for very long or will probably never see again. And so that's uncomfortable to me. So what I want to do is be vulnerable. What I want to do is be present and fully engaged. And so that's what I want to do. And when I was done with that little speech, you could have heard a pin drop, because that was not what anyone else was saying, right? I want to get out of this class learning how to counsel or whatever. I'm talking about vulnerability and really showing up, and no one knew how to respond to that. But hey, if I'm in all the way. This is what vulnerability looks like. Getting naked, here I am, starting it off that way. And so it was awkward. It was embarrassing, but sometimes that's what vulnerability is. And the cool thing was, for the rest of that day, because I had said it out loud, now I'm in all the way, because people know this and are watching, and now I've stated it. So now I got to do it. So for the rest of that day, I asked questions, I raised my hand, I responded to things, I talked to people. And after that 6 hours, I was exhausted. I was totally done with people. So I went back to my room, shut the door, not going to talk to anybody else, shut the door, laid down on my bed, put on some just comforting, relaxing background music. I took a few deep breaths. And I said to myself, Matthew, I'm so proud of you. Way to go. I know that how hard that is for you. That is not easy for you. That is uncomfortable. That is awkward. That was embarrassing. And you did it anyways. That is so courageous. That is so brave. Way to go. You can do it. You can continue to do it just like that for the rest of this 10 days. We're in it together. So let's do it. Right? So you can hear the self-empathy, that healthy self-talk. So usually, I think many of us understand we should have healthy self-talk. A lot of us have grown up or don't even know we do it, but we have negative self-talk. When we mess up, when we do something, that we don't like or whatever, oh, you idiot, I can't believe you did that. You always do that. I'm worthless. I'm not good at this. I'm, diminish, diminish, diminish. When we're already kind of feeling crappy. But even if we do something well, we're ready to diminish, right? And so the first step in learning healthy self-talk is to stop doing the negative self-talk, right? Quit saying it. And so I had been doing that for years, to say, oh, wow, I noticed that I'm beating myself up again, telling myself that I'm not very good at this or whatever. So I tried to stop that, which is a good first step, right? But saying nothing is communicating something as well, right? And as parents, we know that when our child kind of needs help with something or doesn't do something very well or even succeeds at something and we're silent, right, that communicates something to them, that maybe they're not that great or worth you know uh, really investing in or being had anything said to them or those types of things. We start doubting that. And that's the same thing that happens to us when we say nothing or we barely hold back the terrible things we want to say. That's still not all that great. It's better than just heaping on shame, but it's still not all the way to self-love, because the step two is self-empathy, where we actually say the things that are encouraging and loving and inviting, right? And so I think of, what would I want to say to somebody else who's in a similar situation? As we get better at practicing empathy and care for others, right, we can do that for ourselves. I would want to tell somebody else that did something that they don't feel that they're very good at, but they did it anyways. I would want to say to them, way to go, that was courageous, that was brave, I'm proud of you, you lived vulnerably like you want to. And I would want to say, and I've got your back, I'm in this with you, if you need help, let's go, right? And so that's how we can learn to speak to ourselves. And it sounds weird. And I didn't do this like around other people or out loud with other people, because people are going to, why is that guy talking to himself? But we can do that internally, even while we're walking around in the world. And we can especially do it when we take time by ourselves. Some of us have time set aside to talk to God and that kind of thing. Sometimes what God invites me to do is speak to myself in kind ways, because I haven't been, align what I'm saying to myself with what God is saying to myself. And so we can learn that. See, empathy is being able to sit in the darkness with somebody else, sit in someone else's pain. But we can't do that if we can't even sit in our own pain, right? And so we're offering ourselves that kindness, to sit in the vulnerability. And it may be painful, it may be hurtful, it may be limitations and wounds and sin and all that, but it also might be our incredible glory, the places we succeed, the places that we're amazing. Can we sit in those things and say yes to those things? Because again, we're just looking for what's true, not trying to make it any better or worse than it is, just what's true, right? So in this class, I continued to live this way, entering in. I was probably the annoying student to my classmates, because I just kept answering questions, and I would respond to every person that did a presentation and all that kind of stuff. I may have overdone it, but that's me. I'm putting myself out there. I'm doing it. And there's this really neat moment where I was on the phone with Sherry halfway through this week, and I was telling her about all these people. And the interesting thing is, this class was full of, like, I would call them 40-year-old moms, which I have nothing wrong with 40-year-old moms, but it's not really my crowd, especially like 5 or 6 years ago. And I would assume I don't have a lot in common with them and that kind of thing. But it was fascinating, because these 40-year-old moms just started opening up and wanting to talk to me and tell me about their struggles, tell me about their kids, tell me about their world, right? And instead of the small talk that I'm not good at, that I don't like, we just went from surface level way down into real conversation and real life scenarios and all that kind of stuff. And I was loving it. So I was on the phone with Sherry. I'm telling her about this woman who has this struggle and this woman who's amazing because she does these things and all this kind of stuff. And we both had this moment where we paused and we started crying because we realized something. We realized that I had learned to love. I had learned to love, and not perfectly, not all the way, but where in the past I would have been critical and played small and held back and been talking about myself and what I needed. I was able to see other people. And so I had eyes to see what is good, what is beautiful, what is right. I had eyes to see other people's pain and hurt. See, what I was doing is valuing them because I had learned to value myself. Right? It had opened up the dam that had shut all that love up, and the river was flowing. And so the more I could value myself, the more I could value other people and just be ready for it, looking for it, already connected with it. And of course, valuing God and all of that too, to say, oh my gosh, God, you're so amazing in the way you made all these different people. We can interact that way. And it's so good. Right? And so Sherry and I were in tears because I had learned to love when I wasn't that great at loving before. And so this whole thing kind of culminated at the end of those 10 days, where one of these 40-year-old moms was giving her last day presentation, and she needed help connecting her computer to the projector. And so I went up to help her. The rest of the class was kind of talking amongst themselves. And as I was helping her set up her computer, I just noticed from her facial expression, her body language, that she was struggling. And I just said, hey, are you okay? And I'm still kind of blown away by this response. I've never had anything like this happen to me before. She looked at me and took a deep breath. And she said, I don't know how long, it's felt like she didn't say anything for 30 seconds. It was probably 10 seconds, but she took a deep breath, paused, and then said, I am now because I'm looking at your smiling face. Boom. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Because you remember what my deepest desire is to help people, to offer healing and transformation and restoration and freedom to people. And I just did it without even meaning to. I just did it with a smile. I didn't even know I was smiling. I am okay because I'm looking at your smiling face. I was radiating something. We could probably call it love. And I didn't even realize it. Right? Because I was just overflowing, and she felt it. And in that moment, she felt love, she felt accepted, she felt valued, and all the struggle, whatever that was, I have no idea what it was, left her for a minute. Wow. Could we love this way? Could we bring that kind of love to the world? And I don't tell this story to pat myself on the back and say, hey, look how amazing I am. I just want what's true about me. I just want what's true about you, to be real, to be the way that we live, to be who we are and how we are, and offer out of this beautiful, deep love reservoir place where we can just overflow, because it's so needed in our own lives. It's so needed for our kids, for our spouses, for our friends, for the general public. We just need more of this kind of love. And it starts in the most fascinating place. It starts with loving ourselves, right? So I am just so grateful for all of you. Thank you for joining us and walking through this time together. And again, I just want to say I'm open to questions. If you want to email me at matt@deeperministry.com or talk about this more. I coach a lot of people through practical, real ways. How do you learn to love yourself? Because it's unique to you. There's, we talked about some practical general things, but how do you do it? What does that look like for you, right? So email me, matt@deeperministry.com. Check out my website, deeperministry.com. There's lots of resources there now about love. The weekly reading has been all about love and how to receive love and how to love yourself first and all that good stuff. So if you're getting those or you want to get those, go to the deeperministry.com and subscribe there. So I hope you have a great day. and thanks for joining us.